Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will be looking at precedent maintenance in Liberate. My name's Helen, I'm one of the trainers at Line Time, and I'm going to be your panelist today, just answering any questions that you may have during the session. And your host today is Lorraine, and I'll pass you over to Lorraine shortly. We'll just take a look first at what Lorraine's going to be running through today as part of the webinar. So she's going to be looking at how to create a simple precedent, and this is looking at the admin side of Liberate. She's going to be looking how you can add merge codes and adding merge fields into your precedents and using the merge code switches, how to use the conditional paragraphs, and how to use the conditional words. So it's creating a basic precedent from the admin in Liberate and seeing how you can view it in the front end. Any questions that you may have, please just use the usual functionality with your Q&A option. You'll have a little icon on the toolbar. Fire any questions and we'll answer those hopefully as we go along. There'll also be some time at the end as well for any further questions that you want to look at. So I'm going to hand you straight back over to Lorraine and she will start to deliver the webinar for you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Helen. As Helen mentioned, welcome everybody. And I am Lorraine and I'll be taking you through the very simple precedent maintenance and how to create your precedents. So I am currently in Liberate Admin, and in order to access the precedent maintenance, you will find the precedents tab at the top running along. So we just simply press that tab in order to get the buttons appearing here. If I click the first button, which is the precedents button, you will see that we have within here all the various case groups and case types. So for example, if I expand this conveyancing SE one, you will see that I have a purchase, remortgage and sale. And if I expand those ones, you will see all the various precedents that have been created within those particular case types. In order to create a new precedent, we always select the big green button at the top just to make sure everything's cleared at the bottom. You will notice that the case group has held on to conveyancing SE for this particular option. That's because I've had focus on this conveyancing SE group here. So if you did have any focus on any of these and you created new precedent, that would stick in there. So if you were creating something in the, let's say, the flight delay case group, for example, you would need to make sure you update that. So make sure you are looking at the correct areas. So as I say, we'll create a very simple precedent first of all. And so we'll just give it the description of webinar precedent. Now, whatever information you add into the description, this is what's going to be seen within the front end. So whichever precedent the user wants to create, make sure that the precedent description reflects that. So it might be client care letter, letter to client confirming instructions, whatever information you pop in there, the user will be able to know which precedent they need to create. As I mentioned before, you have your case group option. If the wrong one is in there, you can just simply select that drop down list. So you will find the list of all your case groups that have been created in the background. And again, just a quick side note that whenever you have a list like this, especially while it's quite large, the same is this, within the front end of Liberate. If you have your binoculars in one section, you can always switch to description by clicking the header and then start typing. So it quickly drops down to the particular group that you're after, rather than having to scroll through the whole list. I'm going to stay in one particular case group for today's session, so I'm going to select the conveyancing SE one. Once you've selected a case group, when you select the case type drop down, you will be presented with the case types that are linked with that particular case group. So I'm not going to see anything for probate, for example, because I have selected the conveyancing group instead. So if you think, actually, I don't recognise any of these case types, I should be in a different one, you'll just need to revert back to what case group you have selected at that point. And I'm going to select the purchase option. So I'm going to add my precedent to the purchase. The next option is the macro group. So these will have been set up previously, but you can see here that we've got quite a long list, and depending on your setup, You may or may not use our macros, but basically this is going to decipher how the precedent will be printed by the user. So for example, we've got a conveyancing letterhead here. If I was to select that one, this letter that I produce, it's going to be printed off on the conveyancing letterhead. However, if I was to select conveyancing letter and copy, when that is printed by the user in the front end, it will print a letterhead and a white paper copy that you can attach to the file, for example. So those are the settings that will be added in the background. The next we have the file name. So this is up to 8 characters. It can be alphanumeric, can be a mixture of both. It may be ideal to have a code within this that is sort of reflects what the description is potentially. Some sites might just use a specific code where they might just do S123, and then the next one will be S1234, sort of that kind of file name they may have. So I'm just going to use Web123, so you can see we can have a mixture of both alpha and numeric. The next option is the share level, and you can see we've got global, group and case. When you're in admin, you will see this across the system in various areas, whether it be precedents or formulas or workflows, anything like that. So the first one is the global option. Having that set to global means this precedent will be available across all the case groups and all the case types. So even though I am sat in the conveyancing SC purchase case type here, because I have it set to global, even if I was to go into a probate case or a personal injury case, criminal case, if I was to look in the precedents list, I would still see this particular precedent. If I select the group option, that means that I will see this particular precedent within either the purchase, remortgage, and or sale. So I will have access to this same precedent across all these three. So it's looking at the group itself, but I will not have access to it within the flight delay group, for example. And then finally, we have the case option. So this will only be available within the purchase case type. It will not be viewable within the remortgage or the sale. So depending on what you select within here, please be aware that if, for example, if you have it set to global or even potentially the group option, if you have specific data items that are set on this particular precedent, you need to be aware that those data items may be different across the different case types and everything like that. So just be aware when you are setting these specific precedents to global or group that consider the information that you have within that precedent itself. So I'm going to keep this one, I will keep this as global. Next we have security level. I won't set this one as a security level, but you'll see that we have a list of different security levels here at the moment. But it may be that if you have a precedent within here that you don't want certain users to have access to, whether you don't want them to run it or even see it within the precedent list, you have the option of setting a security level. So for example, if I was to set it to fee earner at this point, that would mean that anybody underneath fee earner, such as legal exec, secretary, clerical, receptionist, unassigned, none of those would be able to either view it within the precedent list or even run it. Likewise, if I set it all the way up to 7, everybody underneath 7, practice partner, practice manager, fee earner, etc., they wouldn't be able to view that particular document either. So it's only really in special cases that you would potentially use that security level. I'm not going into client spec or client.cat because that goes into more specific things such as plot sales, those types of sale types or case types even. But the next one we have then is the history cat. Now the history cat is short for history category. So if this precedent wants to go into a specific history category, you can attach it at this point, rather than the user having to select that particular category. So let's select one of these. We'll go with clients for this one. You also have contact category within here. This is more to do with the purple man letter. Some of you may or may not use that, but it's really if it's a contact specific category. So if this letter was purely to go to estate agents, it would pick up the estate agents that have been attached to that particular case, and it would purely create the letter for them. But we're not going to be going into those specific precedents in here. It's purely the inside of a precedent that we're looking at, rather than the different types of letters that you could create. So we're going to leave that blank as well. And then finally, you do have a special use. Again, we're not going to be attaching this, but basically if it was anything to do with Client Connect or marketing label that you're wanting to create, that sort of information, you can add a special use option within there. So we're just leaving it as a very simple one that we've created. And when you've created the top section, you just simply click on the apply button in the bottom right. You will be presented with the top line. As you see, it's yellow, confirming that the document has not passed validation. That's not an error as yet. It's purely because it is brand new and it's not been validated yet. We need to make sure it's been validated so that all the merge codes and everything like that within the document are correct. And once that's been validated, the user will be able to use it in the front end with no issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and design the precedent. Now you do have two options. You have your button at the top within the ribbon bar, straight at the top on the right hand side, called Design Precedent. Alternatively, you can double click the document from the left hand side within the list of all the available precedents. So either or will start producing the document in the background for us. There we go. So as you can see, it's opened up a Word document for us. So I can create this precedent and use all the various options that are available to me in Word. So as you can see, I've got all the options of changing the font, or the size of the font. I can change the colour and everything like that, mark it bold. So I can change my precedent to how I want it to look. You'll also notice down the left-hand side, we have this standard merge codes panel here. The first option you are taken to is what we call the standard merge codes. We know we're in standard. First of all, it says standard merge codes at the top, but also you have 3 tabs running down at the bottom on the left-hand side, and we have the standard one selected. The standard merge codes within here are the merge codes that sit on the system by default. So for example, if I was to expand the company one by selecting the little plus sign next to it, you can see it will give me some more options that I can use, and I can select fee earner as an example, expand fee earner, and it will show me all of the standard merge codes that we have on the system for the fee earner. So these codes, especially the ones that begin with FE, for example, they are linked to the fee earner record. So when you go into maintenance tab at the top and you have the fee earner option, you get the list of the fee earners within there. All the information within that fee earner record is what gets pulled through from here. So if you find that if you were to add the fee earner surname to a precedent, and when it was run in the background, the spelling was incorrect automatically, you would just need to pop back into the fee earner record and make sure the record is up to date, because that's where it's looking. So what we'll do is we'll just start creating a generic letter within here. So when you are typing your letter, obviously there will be information that is not there with code, so you can type away what you would normally add within there. So we're going to add our reference in this particular option. So our reference, I know that's in the case management option potentially. However, if I was to select any of these options, you can see when I select them, we get quite a lot within here. So what I am after is the case code as an example. But because I do have quite a lot, it may be that I don't want to be having to scroll through all of that information. So if I just minimize these, you will see in the top left, we have a filter merge codes option. And when I select that tick box, you will see it does expand everything out for me, but I have an auto filter row that I can search anything that I'm after. So it may be the description. I'm going to look for case code as an option. And you can see it filters down anything that has something similar to merge to the case code. I could also search against merge code. If I knew a part of it, I could just type code, for example. You can see it filters down even more for me. And I know the one that I'm after is actually within the case management, because I'm looking at the case code within the actual case itself. So what I can do here is I can either make sure my cursor is in the right position and then double click. That will bring it across for me automatically. As you get used to all the merge codes, you can simply type it in yourself and that will do the same thing. However, you must make sure that you do have these open and close angle brackets around your merge code, otherwise it will not merge in the front end. I'll just add a little bit more in the front. So what I'm going to add in here is the Fiona initials. So if I was to look for Fiona, after their initials, I think it is initials in there. And you can see under the Fiona heading, I've got initials, which is fi.init. So I'm just going to pop that in the front. So I'm going to type this one in. Close angle brackets. And then anything that you need to add, type in, just make sure it's been added. So I've just done a slash within the center of that. So it should come through as, for example, LM/123. Okay, next we'll just add in a date. So again, we can type that in. Now, when it comes to things like dates, we have at the very bottom, we have this standard codes option, and you can see we have dates there, and it gives you an example of what it will pull through. The one that you always want to use is this date option. So I'm going to double click and add that in. So it's the system date. So it's going to look, for example, in the bottom right corner, it will find what date it is that day the user has produced that document and pull it through. Next, we'll just go through some of these, not dear. So just type in dear. Now this time we want to pull through the client information. So we're writing to the client. So if we go to client information and client detail, these are all the codes that are sat against the client record in the background. So that green globe client record, you have all of these codes, and it's all the ones that generally begin with the CL option. And the one that I'm after is the letter, which one, dear letter title, I think, salutation, actually, that's what I'm after, isn't it? So if I find the salutation, let's use my filter, that'll be quicker, won't it? Salutation. And I want the client record, so I want the cl.salu. As I mentioned before, you have got other codes, but I would always go with the CL. You want the CL option. So I've got the salutation in there. Now, the one thing we do need to add, obviously, is the address for the client. So with that one, that's when we want the letter title. So that's the information that appears at the top of the letter. So if I find letter title, we have cl.letter. Type that in there. And then we want the address. Now for the address, you do have specific lines within the client details. So if I expand client information again, client detail, you'll see we've got CL town, there'll be street potentially. There's also address line 1, address line 2, address line 3. However, you'll notice at the very bottom we have a blocks tab. And when you select the blocks option, there is a client information and client detail. We have these two options. We've got client address and client address continuous. Now I'll just briefly add this one in. Now you could potentially drag the code in. Let me just expand a bit more so I've got more space to pull it through. So I can drag the whole block across and point my cursor to where I want it to land, and you can see it's added. Now you'll see cl.add1, cl.add2. This is not the one that we want to use for this particular letter. If I drag across the continuous option, you will see we've got cl_add1 and _add2. What the underscore does is it pushes the address up. So for example, if I just have a street and postcode, The client record will have blank spaces where the town is and the locality. And if I was to use the cl.add1, cl.add2, I would potentially have, say, for example, one street lane here where it says cl.add1, and then the postcode could potentially be appearing down here, and I have a lot of space in between. However, the underscore will look at the client record and see if there's anything that hasn't been filled out, such as a locality or anything like that. It will ignore any of these and push it up. So what I would have is within this line, I would have one street lane, and then the postcode would appear straight underneath. So just be aware of the underscores, and obviously each client record will be different. So this takes that into account. So use the continuous one within the blocks. Okay, so let's just add a bit more information within here. So if I pop back into standard, and we will go with, I think we want case description next. So we'll add the case description in. And again, as I say, you can mark them as bold or anything that you want. And then finally, we just want to sign that off. So we'll just do a bit more space for the user to add anything in. And this is where you could potentially have yours sincerely. And again, we're going to sign this off with the fee earner details. So we want to minimize that, find our company, fee earner. And then we can use I think it's the fee earner, we'll go with the letter title that we have set up on here. So we'll just add that in. And it might be that you add more information. So for example, whoever the fee earner is for. And then you may want the company name. So the company details, still under company. And you can see within company practice information, we've got the generic company details within here. You've also got branch details. So if you need to pick up the specific branch information, you have that information in there as well. So whichever branch has been set on that particular case, it will pull that through. But we're just going to go with the company name, which is sc.cnam. So we'll add that in there. So it's a very standard letter that we have. So I'm just going to validate that now. So once you've completed the information, you simply press the validate button at the top in your ribbon bar. It confirms it's been successfully validated and we're okay. Then we finally save and close. So now if I go into the front end and if I open up a case, and if we go into precedence, so we have the precedence button, we just want to find our letter. So we called it a webinar. And it was this webinar precedent that we have here. Especially if you're testing, what's handy to use, rather than actually editing the documents and having to go through the process of editing it and saving it to history, you can right click and you will see that you have the preview with merge option. That will allow you just to double check it without having to add it to the history or do any time recording and all that kind of information. So you can just do a quick check to make sure the information has come through as you require it. So as you can see, we've got our fee earner initials that were added. The case code has been pulled through. We have the date. You can see it's pushed up any blank case details on the client record. We've got the salutation, the case description, and yours sincerely, Mrs. S. Lowther for Line Time Limited. Now, a lot of people don't use this type of date, so we're going to jump back to the actual precedence maintenance area and update a couple of these areas. So we'll go back to admin and I will design precedence again. So what you have at the very top, when you do go into precedent maintenance, you will see we have these buttons here at the top right of our ribbon bar. starting with money, dates, general, literal, specials, and document. And within here, we have a number of what we call merge code switches. So if I click on the general one as an example, you will see all the various options that we have available within here. So one example may be make lowercase, and it gives you an example of what that's going to do. So if hello appeared in capitals, it forces it to be lowercase, and vice versa. We have one that makes uppercase within there. And to the right of that, it gives you confirmation of what the switch is. So that's what will appear. In order to use those, if you're not used to those particular switches and you want to see how it comes through, once you've got your merge code on the screen, make sure you highlight it, include the details, include the open and close angle brackets. And for the date one, you can see we have a specific dates button. So selecting that, again, it will give you examples of how you can actually pull through a date, such as you've got things abbreviated month in date, for example, 14-DC-09. But the one that everybody pretty much uses is the one called full date, and it is the W switch. So if I select that, you will see it puts it in how it should be appearing. So we've got W:date. And what that's going to do is it's going to change 7/6/2021 to 7 June 2021. I'll just use another one. So if I highlight the description, and that one that I used, the general one, which was making uppercase, we can select that, and you can see we've got U.mt. So it's handy to use the switches first of all to get used to that, because some of them are colon and some maybe just be a full stop in between. But what will happen with this one is it's going to force it to become uppercase. So we'll just do a quick check on that. So again, we want to make sure we validate and then OK and save and close. Go back to the front end and we should be able to right click and preview with merge again. There we go. So you can see the date has been updated as we want to see it, and the heading has been forced into uppercase. So let's pop back into here, and what we'll do now is we'll look at a bit more into the conditional paragraphs and conditional words. So we might want to find a specific precedent that we want to use, and as you can see there are potentially thousands of precedents across all of the different case groups and case types. Got quite a few case types within here. So again, we do have a filter precedents tick box which adds in your auto filterer within here so that you can just simply search. So if I was to search client care letter, for example, you can see we have a client care letter against pretty much every single case type. So if I'm wanting to find a specific client care letter, for example, you'll notice that we have these filter options. So we've got the case group and case type. So if I wanted to filter by case group, I could select the little filter at the top, and you can see we've got a list of all the case groups within here. And I want to look just purely for the conveyancing SE. So if I select that tick box and close, you can see it gets rid of all the other ones out of the way for me. So if I'm working on a specific case type or case group at that point, I can forget about all the others, get them out of the way, and all I see are the ones in the conveyancing group. I could go one step further, or I could skip the case group option completely and go straight to case type. If I select that option, you can see it filters down the ones that are available now at the moment, because I'm just looking at conveyancing. And I want to look at the purchase one. So I will close that. If I expand that now, I can only see the purchase ones. So I'm getting rid of anything that I don't want to see and have to scroll through. If I click on filter precedents again, go with client care letter, you can see I just have the one available now. So I'm going to double click this one. There we go. So you can see that we have our precedent already set up. You can see we've got a full reference at the top. We've got the date appearing. We've got the letter details, the client. And you can see got quite a lot of information within here already. So what you'll see with some of these, for example, if I just highlight this particular one, just give that a highlight so hopefully you can see that. So we've got 18 highlighted. Now that's the specific data item number. So if I point you back to the left-hand side again, we also have the data items tab at the bottom. If I was to select data items, what that shows me are all the data items that were created on this specific case type. So all these data items are what's available on the purchase case type. And number 18 is the purchase price. So it's actually at the top here, number 18, actual purchase price. So that's going to pull through whatever the amount is on the case. So you can pull through any information that the user has added onto a case, whether it's purchase price. This one at the top is the purchase property. You'll see we have some merge code switches of SP. And what that SP does is basically forces a space in somewhere. So if any information hasn't been completed, it's not going to leave double spaces or anything like that within there. As I say, there's quite a lot, especially if you click on general, there are a lot of merge code switches. So if there's anything that you want any more information on, please feel free to give us a shout or speak to our support team, and they'll be able to explain those in a bit more detail for you, but you will have them in your manual as well with some examples. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that out of there. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and just point out another merge code or switch that we have, which is this one here at the bottom, which is the VQ switch. Now this is quite handy. So if it's something that is potentially going to be different all the time on each case, it's not something you want to particularly save on the case itself, such as please confirm who the firm's client partner is, you can see that we have this as an option. Now this works by, what you can do is if I just press return, I'll go into, let's see if I can remember which one it is. I think it's in specials. We do, yeah. Prompt user for question, the VQ switch. When you select an option, it does point out how to lay the information out. So we've got the VQ. Let me just make that a bit larger because it's quite small on this one. There we go. So it's laid out. So we've got the star VQ is already laid out for us. Then it says, what is the question? So this is the question that you're popping in there. And then you have the pipes in between. So we've got the VQ pipe. What's the question pipe? Then you have VQ1, so variable to hold the answer, which is what we have here. So first of all, it's saying that we need a question, added the question in, and this is what's going to appear to the user, then VQ1. Now, where is that going to land? As you can see, if I just scroll a bit further up, you can see we have VQ1 in here. So whatever the user completes for that question, it will be added within this particular area. You may have a number of questions. So if this was a second question, it would look like this. So if I remove this out of here, you have your VQ again. So you're forcing a question. What is the question would appear to the user for them to complete. And then if I was to type in here, VQ2, that's where the second answer would appear. So it's that they see that as a merge code. So I'll just leave that briefly in there so we can see that appearing when we run it. The next thing we're going to do is just pop in a quick conditional paragraph. So again, just like the VQ switch, you can select specials at the top and you see we have a conditional paragraph option. When you hover that, it gives you further options to select. So how do you want to ask whether something is true? So one of the most common ones is probably include when equal to. So if I was to select that, it shows you how it's laid out. Let me just expand that a bit further again. So we have star I, this is the first line. For all your conditional paragraphs, this is how it's going to start. So star I means include. So we're going to include this paragraph if the top part is true. So for this one, we're just going to type in, just type it in quickly and then I'll explain what I've typed in. And then you have your test item as well. So what we're looking here is include this paragraph if the case type equals and we're going to add in the case type code. So we've got SERP and pipe. So include this paragraph if the case type equals a purchase. So if I update the paragraph to actually say this is a purchase, then you have start to end, and this is how you will end all of your paragraphs. So include this paragraph if the case type equals purchase. If I was to open a different type of case, so if I was in a sale case, for example, this paragraph would not appear. So it's only going to appear if the top section is true. I'll just briefly mention again, back into conditional paragraphs, it does tell you which one's which. So include when not equal to, include when greater than, so you can look at purchase prices or any costs or anything like that. Exclude will do the opposite. So it will just come up with an E, for example. So instead of an I, your exclude options would be an E. So just bear in mind when you do select those, which one you would prefer to use. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly validate that one. Okay, that, and save and close. And we'll give this one a quick test. So back to the front end, I just need to find my client care letter within here. And again, if I right click and preview with merge. So my merge question, this was the first one, the VQ1. Please confirm who the client partner is. I just pop in John Smith and okay that one. And what is the question? So this was the example one I threw in. What is the question? So let's put reply to VQ2 and okay that. So you'll see how those VQ ones, they appear to the user before the precedent is created so they can update that information. If I scroll down to the bottom where we added those bits and pieces, first of all, you can see that we've got John Smith appearing, which was the partner, so that was the VQ1. And then you can see here the reply to VQ2. So you could have a list of questions. You're not limited to how many VQs you add within the system. But you just need to make sure that when you add your merge code of VQ1, VQ2, you're putting it into the right place. You could have those VQ questions out of the way. So I would always put those VQ options either at the very bottom of your precedent or the very top, so that you're not going to get them mixed up when you're looking at different paragraphs. And then finally, we have this is a purchase. So it's pulled that paragraph through because it has seen that it's to be included because we are in a purchase case type. Okay, finally, we're just going to pop in to look at conditional words. So if I edit that precedent again, just scroll down here. I'll just remove that out of the way so we've got a nice clear space. So the conditional words are basically words within a paragraph that you may or may not want. So really simple option, maybe something like he or she, what do you want to pull through depending on what has been added into there. So for example, we have, let's have a look. Your fee earner will be, we need to add a merge code in there, so we'll find our fee earner name. We want the company details, so if expand company, expand fee earner, and we'll go with, let's go with fee earner name, and fee earner surname. And then we want to say your fee earner will be whoever it is, and he or she will be dealing with this case for you. And I just finish that off. So we need to fill this in to say either he or she. Now there are a couple of options we could use. I just type it here out of the way. You do have your star if option. So some people do get confused between the start if and start I. So just try and remember, if it's I or E, that's include or exclude, and that's a paragraph as a whole. Whereas if it's start if, that's your conditional word, and that's what can appear within the paragraph itself. So there's no Q end or anything like that. So this would be star if Fiona was male, pop in this, if otherwise pop in this. But the one we're going to use, which not many people use that much, so I'm going to include it in this particular session, is the lookup and replace option. So I'll do that separate so you can see it pull through in here. The lookup and replace, again, you will find in these specials, and you can see here we have lookup and replace. So I can select that. And again, it gives you a breakdown of how it will look. So the first one is open angle brackets, LUR, lookup and replace. Then we have colon. And then what we want to do is add the list of values. So what are we looking at? So in order to pull through the gender of the Fiona, I'm going to remove the example that we have in here. And we're going to look at the Fiona title, because within the Fiona record, it says either Miss or Mrs. or Mr. So we're just going to look at that as an example. So the Fiona title, which is TITL. Oh, you don't want that, sorry. That goes at the end. I'll come back to that. So we want to add a list of what could potentially appear. So we may have Mr, comma, Mrs, Miss, or Ms. So there's no spaces, it's Mr, comma, straight into the next one, comma. So we're making a list within here. You then have colon, so to separate it out. And the next option is list of substitutes. So what do you want to pull through instead of? So we want to pull through, if it's Mr, it will be he, Mrs, she, and then again. So we should have 4. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, colon, and then you put them in the same order. So if it's Mr, it's going to be he, if it's Mrs, it will be she, if it's Miss, it will be she, and Ms will be she again. Then you have colon, and then you want to add the merge code that you're actually looking at to compare, which is the fe.titl, which is the Fiona title that's been saved on that Fiona record. So I'm just going to pop that into this particular area here. So it will be in the right place. I'll just tidy that up a bit. Okay, I'll make that a bit bigger as well so it all matches. So I've just got that one code within there. We'll deal with the case for you. So let's validate and save and close. And if I pop back into the case again, I'll just point out the properties. We have Susan Lowther within here. So if I right click and preview with merge, we'll add in the partner, we'll pop in John Smith again. We'll get the VQ2 option popping up. So there you go. So your Fiona will be Susan Lowther, and she will deal with the case for you. So if I just quickly change that back, so we'll just make sure our Fiona, so we'll pop into the Fiona so I can show you where that came through. We're going to Susan Lowther, you'll see that it's looking at that title there. I just double check Peter Ridgewood, make sure his title's in there. We have Mr. Peter Ridgewood, so we'll just OK that and close. Let's quickly change the Fiona to Peter Ridgewood. Just give that a save. Pop into precedence and run that merge again. Scroll back down. Your Fiona will be Peter Ridgewood and he will deal with the case for you. That's just a very generic one as an example, but that lookup and replace option is quite handy if it's just something simple you just want to, it's either this or this. So as I say, you do have your lookup and replace, or you do have your if statements as well, which can go even further. Again, if you want more information on those if statements, please contact us and let us know. But feel free to have a play around with all of those switches that are in there. If I just reopen this again. As I mentioned, you have money as an example. So if you have, particularly any forms may require a purchase price to be written out in text rather than numeric. You have things like money value to alpha. So what you could do with that one is, if I use this one as an example, I'll highlight number 18, which is the purchase price, which will come through as 500000 for 500,000. If I select money and value to alpha, you will get the F switch within there, and that will actually write that out as 500,000 in actual words. Dates, as I say, you have all those various options. W is the main one that people use for maybe letters or things like that, but you do have options where things like months only, instead of showing as 12 July 09, it will show 07, so it's pulling through the month only. So you've got all those options, but you have things within general, you have quite a lot of different options within here. So again, just always give those a test because there's quite a lot within those options. And you also have the specials. The specials is where you will have things like your conditional paragraphs. So if you're ever unsure how that is to be laid out, I expand that. You have the option of selecting a specific option and it will give you an example. So remember, your conditional paragraphs will be laid out in 3 lines. You have your condition, first of all. Straight underneath is your paragraph, whether it's 1 line or 200 lines, complete your paragraph. And then at the very bottom, star Q end will finish that off. And that is it really. Is just, as I say, it's a very simple bog standard webinar for just generic precedent maintenance, but you do have quite a lot of merge codes switches, paragraphs, all of that kind of information. As I say, that should all be in your manual with examples, but if you do have any issues of certain things not working, please contact us and let us know. I'll pass back to Helen, see if we've had any questions at all, or whether there's any questions that may appear at the end.
Thanks, Lorraine. There's no outstanding questions at the moment, so we'll leave things just open for a minute or two to see if anybody wants to push anything forward that we can take another look at. While you're thinking of any questions you may have, just remember there are a few more webinars coming up through the next couple of months on our website, so just pop onto the website and you'll be able to see what's coming up in the next few weeks. And we do have our webinars now available as a recording, so we record these and we'll put those also onto the website. It only takes a couple of days after you've seen this, and then it will appear on the website for you to have a look at if you're unsure of anything at all. We'll just leave this open another minute or so, see if any questions come through, and if not, then thanks very much for joining. I hope you found it useful.
Thanks, Helen. I'll pause you there. I'll take this question because I don't know if anybody else is having the same issue, but it's a bit crackly, your voice at the moment. So I'll deal with a question that's come through. If anybody didn't hear, Helen did mention that the webinars are the list of webinars coming up are on the website, and we are actually starting to save these webinars. It's being recorded and it will be on YouTube as well. You should have the link within our website as well. But we do have a question. Do you have a manual for the merge code formatting, please? Yeah, I can get that across to you and say if anybody else requires that, just give us a shout. But if it's just for do you just mean the merge code switches, just that particular area? If that's all you're after, I can certainly get that across to you. Yeah, no problem. I can see I think somebody's put something in chat. Let me just open up the chat 1 second. Where's chat? All right. Okay, no problem. So I will get a copy of those emailed out to you this afternoon. Right, I think that's it for the moment. So that's done. Okay, so we've got no more questions. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining. As I say, hopefully, if you do think of any other questions later on down the line, then feel free to contact us at support, and we'll get back to you, and hopefully we'll see you in our future webinars. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.